Good morning, and on this special day, I would like to wish every one of you a very happy Thanksgiving. I truly hope you all have a wonderful day with family and friends. We will be going over the weather you can expect today, as well as the forecast for the coming days. We will discuss a significant winter storm that is currently affecting the Great Lakes and the Northeast, along with much of the Mid-Atlantic with considerable lake effect snowfall. That low-pressure system has moved northward, and we will talk about what that means for you. There is another weather system moving into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes region that is expected to bring heavy snowfall totals as well. Then we are closely tracking a developing snowstorm for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, which is likely to occur around the 2nd or 3rd of December. We will also cover everything that follows, which includes a great deal of cold air and more opportunities for snow. We have much to discuss, so let us begin. As you may notice, my voice is sounding a bit stronger. We are getting very close to bringing my face cam back and returning to our normal operations as I continue to recover from a rather difficult illness. Now, looking at the national picture, we have a few areas of interest. There is some unsettled weather over the northwest, where we are seeing snowfall at the higher elevations and rainfall in the lower elevations, which is quite typical for that region. In fact, for this time of year, it is a relatively quiet day for the northwest. We are also observing a great deal of snow activity happening around the Great Lakes. Very heavy lake effect snowfall is ongoing at this time. There are also a few passing snow showers across the plains, and even here along the lower Appalachian mountain range. I am seeing some activity in that area. However, outside of that significant lake effect snowfall, it is shaping up to be a fairly pleasant, though very cold, Thanksgiving day. Of course, that lake effect snow is having a major impact. So let's take a closer look at that situation, because it is quite impressive. We have been discussing this for a few days, and as you can see, there are very heavy, persistent bands of lake effect snow. I would say the most intense band right now is the one impacting the upper peninsula of Michigan and the northern tip of the lower peninsula. We also see a few heavier areas in Indiana and lower Michigan. Another band is coming off of Lake Erie, affecting parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. And finally, there is some heavier activity up near the Adirondacks and Watertown, New York. I have a very dear friend named William, who serves in the Army as a helicopter pilot, and he lives up in Watertown, so I certainly hear all about the weather they experience. He was my very first friend, and he remains my greatest friend, for whom I am so grateful. He lives up there, and I suppose I am just feeling particularly thankful today. I did not intend to give a personal mention like that, but my best wishes to William. Now, let us turn our attention to the forecast models to see what is coming our way. We will examine what is happening later today, and then look at the entire weather pattern ahead. We will start with the European model. I should mention that I am making this video a little earlier than usual today, as I have plans for the rest of the day. Therefore, this is the overnight model run. There will be new model guidance released later today. The midday guidance from the European model will be available in about 2 hours from the time I am recording this. You will likely be seeing this video a little while after that, as I generally upload in the late afternoon and evening. I find that is the best time, as more people are available to watch the forecast then. In any case, we will be posting a great deal of model guidance within our online community page. If you do join us there, you will receive updated information. If I am not posting it myself, there are many people in that group posting every single update from every model run. It is wonderful to see. We are now well over 600 members, and so many of you are wonderfully active. Please consider joining that community. Now, looking at the model guidance, we can see the lake effect snowfall is expected to continue for most of the day. It is no surprise, as the cold air is still moving into the region. I will note, this particular map is for 7 p.m. Eastern Time, which is, of course, quite a bit earlier for those of you on the west coast. And we do see this storm system is expected to intensify as the day progresses. So, even though this morning, it is 11:51 Eastern Time right now, it did not look too severe in the northwest, conditions there are expected to worsen. And again, the other major story is the continuing lake effect snowfall. The snow is already accumulating heavily in some of these areas, and it is just going to keep coming down. This is certainly remarkable weather for Thanksgiving. I know that many of you dealt with lake effect snow last year as well, so this makes it year 2 in a row. For tomorrow, Black Friday, which is the 28th, we see much of this snowfall moving into the northern Rockies and the northern plains. The lake effect snowfall begins to die down a little bit, but it is still ongoing. A lot of this activity is also spreading further eastward into the northeast, so there may be some passing snow showers. Naturally, the farther and farther you get from the Great Lakes, the less likely it is to be a heavy, consistent band of snow. But snowflakes will certainly be flying in the northeast corner of the nation for the day tomorrow, and it will be plenty cold enough for them. By Saturday, the 29th, we can see that next snowstorm we have been talking about for the northern plains, the Midwest, and the Great Lakes, and perhaps even some of the Ohio Valley, beginning to develop by Saturday afternoon. As we continue forward into the evening hours, around 10 p.m. Eastern Time, we see the low pressure center situated over parts of the Midwest. We are forecasting heavy snowfall in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, even extending into Ohio. This is going to be a large-scale system and quite widespread as well. This is a very large region that will be seeing snowfall from this event. I believe there is a good chance this will be a significant storm for the Midwest and Great Lakes. We have been forecasting for weeks that this area in particular would see heavy snowstorms in the coming pattern. This has been the region that I have said is really going to be active in the upcoming pattern, and we see that coming to fruition with this approaching snow system. By the morning of Sunday the 30th, we see that this system is no longer the strongest low. It is actually difficult to pinpoint. The lowest pressure is somewhere up here, and it is not even particularly strong by this point. However, the intensity of the low does not always determine the severity of the impacts. That relationship does not directly correlate. So sometimes you can see significant impacts from a very weak low pressure system, and other times a strong low brings relatively minor effects. You can certainly see some variance there. There is still a lot of snowfall for the Great Lakes and a large part of Canada as well. We are also starting to see some of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, especially in the interior, receiving snowfall from this system. And it is even likely that we will see thunderstorm activity across the deep south along the cold front that is stretching down from that very weak low. As we move toward the overnight hours on Sunday, at about 10 p.m. Eastern Time, we see that this low moves eastward. What is left behind is mostly high-elevation snowfall in the northeast. Some new lake-effect snowfall also starts to develop after this system moves through, because that cold wind will once again be moving right over the lakes. So those lake-effect snow bands will get going again. I can only imagine what it is like to receive all of this lake-effect snow, then have a major snowstorm on the way, followed by even more lake-effect snow after that. I am truly curious to see what kind of totals you all end up with by the time we reach the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of December, because it is going to be quite substantial. We see that as time goes on, as we head toward Tuesday morning on the 2nd, this next system is already beginning to organize. It is a very active pattern for a little while, clearly. The southern jet stream is feeding moisture into all of this, while the northern jet stream is bringing some moisture, but mostly very rich, cold air, and all of that is coming together. So we can see a number of storms, likely with more thunderstorms for the deep south, as that seems to be a recurring trend. We also see some light snowfall for the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, but watch how this progresses as we continue. This system just continues to intensify, with that low developing off the South Carolina coast by Tuesday afternoon on the 2nd. Then we get that low moving offshore, and it starts to rapidly intensify, dropping down to a 995 millibar low. Then we end up with snowfall getting started in the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. This is Wednesday at 1 a.m. on the 3rd, and the pressure drops to 993. It is situated in a nearly perfect location, well to the southeast of Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard. We end up with heavy snowfall for a lot of Ohio and West Virginia. It is beginning to come to an end for them at this point, but in the hours just before this, Pennsylvania was seeing heavy snowfall across almost the entire state, as was New York State and much of New England. This could be a very significant storm for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but there are still 5 or 6 days to go, so there is certainly time for this forecast to change quite a bit. Please keep that in mind. We are still trying to pinpoint the details of this storm. The most recent trends, especially since yesterday's video, have shown the models progressively pushing this system a little bit farther to the northwest. So the question becomes, will it continue to shift farther northwest, or will it stay where it is currently projected? Or is it possible it will revert back a little bit farther to the southeast? We have to get the fine-tuning of all those details worked out, because it could make or break this system for many areas. This is not a guaranteed event for anyone, so I do not want anyone's hopes to get too high just yet. But this is a very promising sign for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. As the days progress, our confidence will increase, depending on what we see from the models. That storm then comes to a close later on the 3rd. After that, we are left with some smaller clipper systems moving through, as you can see there, affecting the northern plains, Midwest, and Great Lakes. We get another, more significant clipper system trying to move through as well. Then we do get a bit of a warm-up, finally, by the time we are reaching about day 11, I believe it is, on Monday the 8th. It might even be day 12, which is well into the long range, so please take this with a grain of salt. But this one does finally take us out of this Arctic pattern and into something a little bit more zonal, with some influence from a ridge in the southeast. By the 8th, we will have to see if that is accurate or not. But regardless, today is the 27th. We have 3 more days of November, if you do not count today, and then this would be 8 days into December. So this is very far out in the forecast. If we see cold temperatures from now until the 7th, that is a very significant cold and snowy pattern that we find ourselves in. We do see a coastal low right here. This is another signal. I mean, this is far out, but we see another similar coastal system developing. There is just not as much cold air in place, so we end up with mostly all rainfall from this one on this particular model run. But that is a clear signal for a storm, and if the temperatures change, that could look a little bit different. And then, towards the end of the period, which again, please take with a grain of salt, there is still a ton of snowfall for the western mountain ranges. And then also for the north-central states, we get going again with another snow system. And it looks like we are pulling a cold front eastward again. So this would perhaps show signs of us cooling back down in the east once more, with another blast of Arctic air. The GFS model is going to agree on multiple fronts. Obviously, the lake effect snowfall is ongoing. We get this major Midwest, Great Lakes, and Ohio Valley storm that moves through. And then we do get this more southern storm developing. As of the early morning model run, which is the one we're using today, again, I am making this video much earlier in the day than I typically do. As of that overnight model run, we do end up seeing this low tracking much closer to the coast. This leads to more rainfall for eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, southern New England, and even southern New York, creating some mixing issues where the heaviest snowfall would otherwise be. The heaviest snow is instead focused more toward the interior of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, as you can see. Now, before we move on with this model run, I want to show you something, because I do have some of the midday model run information available. It is not completely finished yet. I only have it out to about 200 hours, but I can see this storm on the more updated guidance. And what we see here is that it is a little bit farther to the southeast, and we see a lot more of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and southern New York, and southern New England getting snowfall there, as opposed to that mixing solution. So again, let me show you the difference. This is the early morning run, and this is the midday run. You can tell that it obviously shifted a little bit to the southeast, so there is a good possibility that this forecast is going to trend back and forth. It is not over for southern New England, eastern Pennsylvania, or New Jersey. These are fairly typical model fluctuations that you see at days 5 and 6, and we just have to work through them and ride out the roller coaster. And we carefully look for trends in the computer models to determine what is most likely to happen. Now, returning to the 6Z model run, let's continue our analysis. After that first system moves out, we will examine the total snowfall amounts later. What is quite interesting in this particular model run is another potential event developing around Friday the 5th. This is still within a 10-day forecast, where we see the northern jet stream dipping down while the southern jet stream adds moisture over the deep south. You may recall that the European model did not show this quite as strongly. However, this model does show another snow system developing for the lower Midwest, the lower Ohio Valley, and even into Kentucky. This system then moves toward the Mid-Atlantic states, including Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, before continuing up into the northeast as another coastal system. This suggests we may need to watch for not just one, but perhaps 2 or more systems along the east coast. Now, it is important to note that this particular system does not have much cold air to work with, which is similar to what the European model showed, meaning it may not produce significant snowfall. Indeed, I believe the European model indicated something very similar. In fact, just like that model, this one also points toward a warmer weather pattern for a few days after the 10th of the month. This could be an emerging trend, or it could simply be that the forecast is too far out and things will change. It is difficult to say for certain, but it is something both major models are showing, and it is my job to point out these consistencies. Now, let's turn our attention to the total precipitation forecast. We are seeing more moisture in the west than we saw before, and perhaps more in the east as well. So, to get a better picture, let's look at how this compares to our normal precipitation. You can see a great deal more green on the map across the nation compared to yesterday's forecast. However, parts of California are still looking significantly drier than normal, potentially multiple inches below average over the next 15 days. For most of the country, though, conditions are expected to be either slightly below average or, in many places, well above average, as you can see. This suggests a bit more precipitation for the United States overall in today's model run. Let's now examine the total snowfall on our European model. What we are seeing is a significant amount of snow for the mountainous west, as well as for the plains and the northern Midwest. In fact, from the northern plains, across the upper Midwest and into the Great Lakes, some areas could see multiple feet of snow. That snow system moving through the Mid-Atlantic and northeast is also expected to bring a plowable snowfall event for many communities, with multiple inches of accumulation expected. The GFS model tracks this system a little farther to the southeast. As you will recall, this model shows 2 separate snow events in the east, which would result in considerable totals. Now, what I would like to do is go back in the forecast to isolate that first snow system. So let's focus on just this one event right here. I will even zoom in on the eastern part of the country so we can all get a clearer view. This particular map takes us through Wednesday the 3rd. For this single snowstorm, we can see the heaviest amounts are farther inland, affecting northern New England, upstate New York, and northwestern and central Pennsylvania, rather than the immediate coast. This means southern New England and the coastal areas of the Mid-Atlantic would not see as much accumulation. However, if we look at the 12Z model run, we see a different story, with eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and southern New England receiving the heaviest totals, even New York City. So, we are going to see this go back and forth. I cannot tell you with certainty what will happen this far out. we are still beyond that reliable forecast range. We have some computer guidance suggesting that the coast could indeed see some snowfall. At the same time, other guidance suggests it will not. It is going to be a classic back-and-forth battle, which is very typical for a forecast at this distance. Therefore, we will continue to monitor every single model run very closely. There is certainly a great deal of information to go over with this particular system, and I know it has become a topic of great interest for many folks lately. Now, turning our attention to temperatures, I will reiterate that we are in a cooler pattern for now and for the beginning of December. The models have been showing a trend toward warmer weather as we get closer to the 10th of the month. This could simply be a minor fluctuation in the forecast that will go away, or it could be the start of a genuine trend. It could be a solid trend that does come to pass. We will have to watch it very closely, but for now, we are looking at very cold conditions for the next several days. A second Arctic blast will arrive this weekend, followed by even a third cold spell during the first few days of December. It is around the 8th of the month that we start to see a feature known as the Southeast Ridge building in, and that lasts through the 9th and 10th. We then see a brief cool down before temperatures warm up again around the 11th and 12th. However, this particular model run ends with what appears to be another major Arctic outbreak on the horizon. And again, any detail that far out in the forecast, at hour 360, should be viewed with considerable caution. The most important takeaway for now is that we expect very cold weather up until about the 7th or 8th. After that, we may see some warmer air move in, but it does not appear to be permanent. The models are suggesting more Arctic air will follow, so it would likely be a temporary warm-up, if the models prove correct. Looking at the GFS model here, we are going to see some very good agreement on this general pattern. It shows cooldown number 1, cooldown number 2, and then cooldown number 3, which is a bit more significant than on the European model. This model even suggests a fourth wave of cold air as we approach the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Following that, it also shows a warm-up, but with fewer signs of Arctic air returning immediately after. That is a difference worth noting. Now, I believe it is critical to look at another tool we use for long-range forecasting, so let me bring up the ensemble model runs for you. Let me also bring this one toward the end of its run. What we see is that even for the period from the 2nd through the 12th of December, so half of this period covers the 8th through the 12th, we still see warmer air along the west, which indicates a pattern that favors cold in the east. And we still see that Arctic air on the ensemble models. Now, the ensemble models are an average of 20 to 30 different computer simulations. By taking the average, we get a more reliable outlook for the long range, which is great. Typically, these ensemble models are most helpful in the day 5 through 15 timeframe, which is exactly what we're examining right here. This is in contrast to what we call the operational models, which are the single GFS and European models we just viewed. Looking here at the European ensemble model, we do see some slight indication of that southeast ridge, but nothing significant. The main signal is for cold air to continue from the 2nd through the 12th. And this is the European ensemble. Now here is the GFS ensemble model, and it shows much of the same thing. There is really good agreement here. We have warmer air along the west coast, Arctic air continuing to move into the east, and that southeast ridge remaining a minor factor for only the very deep southeast. What this tells me is that until we see the ensemble models change their forecast regarding the cold air in the long range, I am not ready to forecast a significant warm-up. Of course, this is never anything to cause alarm, but I will not be convinced of a warmer pattern around the 8th, 10th, or 12th until I see strong, consistent guidance suggesting that. So, I would encourage you to maintain that same cautious perspective. With all of that said, I want to wish each and every one of you a very happy Thanksgiving. I am truly thankful for all of my viewers, and I am in a wonderful mood today, thanks in large part to all of you. I love making these videos. I have been fortunate enough to do this for many years, and I sincerely hope to continue doing so for a long time to come, because I enjoy it so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you all enjoy some wonderful food with your families and friends, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.